Once again, recording has started. Good morning. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining for another session of Azure Power Lunch. I hope everybody had a very happy new year and a wonderful holiday season. And as you know, this call is being recorded and we place our recordings on our YouTube channel. So if you don't want to be recorded, we want to drop off now. So with that, let's start with our topic of discussion, which is SQL Managed Instance latest updates. As we always do, we're gonna go over what is SQL Managed Instances, spend a few minutes on it, some of the key features, and then we will look at some of the more recent updates that have happened. And of course, there is a simple demo that we will go over on the creation of the instance and what it entails. Okay. So first of all, let's talk about SQL in Azure in general. There are different ways where you can run. When we talk about SQL in Azure, we talk about SQL Server in Azure. There are different ways you can have that capability. One way is to run a Azure VM and install SQL Server on it, and you can set up your own infrastructure. Um, that will give you the most freedom, mostly for lift and shift scenario, but at the same time, it will put the onus of taking and caring of the virtual machines and all the infrastructure on your part. Okay, so that's something that you have to think about. Uh, so with that, then you that's the infrastructure as service option. Then you have the platform as a service option, in which, let's say that if you just need the relational engine, let's say that you have a relational database that you want to run in Azure, and it has tables, relationships, foreign key, primary key, ER relationships, and you run it in Azure. That's where Azure SQL database is there. You can bring it in and you can run the relational engine. There it provides the database relational pieces for you. But let's say if you want more, you want the server aspects like agent, like service broker, like CLR, these pieces, what do you do then? In that case, that's where Azure SQL Managed Instance comes into picture. This is the kind of, think of it, the best of both worlds. You have the almost 100% feature compatibility between running a SQL Server in a VM, and the flexibility of PaaS, where you don't have to worry about the underlying infrastructure. So what you're getting is a service that is compatible to the SQL Server that you may be running on-prem or in a VM, and at the same time, you're getting the flexibility of a platform or service capability. So that's the goal. And this is where you are kind of modernizing your application and things like that. That's where you want to take advantage of this. So what this offers. So first of all, SQL Server is pre-installed, and basically it's versionless. So it always have the latest version um, there for you. Have capabilities like SQL Server Agent and SQL Mail. You have the Distributed Transaction Coordinator (DTC). Things like Service Broker is there. SQL CLR is there. And just keep in mind, some of the services like SQL Server Analysis Services, SQL Server Integration Services, and SQL Server Reporting Services are not there. Anyways, as you know, that SQL Server Reporting Services is kind of deprecated. I mean, the direction is to move with Power BI. In case of SQL Server Integration Services, you can do it through Data Factory. So there are some way around it, but the majority, the core of the features are supported with this managed platform. That's why it's called a SQL Server Managed Instance, because you are running a SQL Server in the cloud, which is almost compatible in feature with what you may be running in the as an infrastructure as a service in Azure or on prem, and gives you the most flexibility to move your workloads into Azure. Okay, so here are some of the things that, first of all, gives you different option, like how you want to configure, and we will take a look at it. You can connect to it in a variety of ways. You can deploy it in inside a VNet, and at the same time, you can create a private endpoint to it. And in terms of configuration, you know, you have the portal, you have the CLI, and just keep in mind that once you have this thing in Azure, you have all the Azure goodies that goes with it, like role-based access control, and we will take a look at that in a couple of sites. So first of all, this one, there are two options that you can deploy this. One is the general purpose. So general purpose should fit most of your common workloads, you know, um, and that has no read-only replica. There is one another replica that is there in terms of high availability, and there are no read-only replicas there. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And there are different hardware options available. And what we will do is once we look in the demo, that will make it more clear to you what are different options are that are available um, to you. Okay. Second option is business mission critical. In this scenario, you have workloads that are very latency sensitive. Those workloads where you need the maximum performance and throughput and things like that, and you want to have the best recovery options. That's where this business mission critical comes in. You have three replica, they can be deployed across zone. You have one read only replica as well. So that is great when you have certain workloads that, so let's say you have a database, okay, and or set of databases deployed in Azure SQL managed instances, and there are certain workloads which are read only. Okay, instead of uh, kind of connecting those workloads to read write replica, you can only connect them to read only replicas. So to offload some of the kind of a load from traffic from your other replica. So that's another option. And just keep in mind that the maximum size of Azure SQL Managed Instance is 16 terabyte. And let's continue to move on. And here is kind of a high level, you know, picture of what different security options are available. So once again, once you are in Azure, so you get the all the security, privacy, and compliance goodies that comes with Azure. That is a part of your service now. So some of the things that you have to do in infrastructure as service, now they're available as a part of, or if you're running it on Azure in on-prem, and you have to do certain things. Now when you're running in Azure, they are available to you as a part of the platform. For example, you can deploy inside a VNet, provide security. You can create a private endpoint. So private endpoint support is there now. So you can create a private endpoint and access it through that. Of course, when you are in Azure, you have the support for role-based access control. So with role-based access control, you can assign roles, and that's how you can access the database. And at the same time, it supports not only SQL Server and AD Auth, it also supports Windows authentication now as well. Okay, managed identities are also supported. Okay, row level security is there. In regards to encryption, the biggest thing is that it supports an customer managed key based encryption. So you can bring your customer keys, put those in a key vault, and then use those to encrypt data at rest. So encryption at rest, that's where those are supported. Of course, dynamic data masking is available. Then you have the some of the in terms of security management, Microsoft Defender for SQL is available, and you can use and take advantage of that for provide additional security. Any questions so far? And here is a high level overview of some of the other capability in terms of performance. Um, so same database engine. Once again, it's not a different SQL. The engine is the same. It's just provided as a platform as a service, so you can expect the same great performance that you expect on-prem or in infrastructure as service now as a part of the cloud platform. And once again, you have Azure Monitor available, so you can use for monitoring, outside SQL, and of course, full DMV and X event and um, query, all of the goodies are available inside SQL, so you can take advantage of those. So once again, you're bringing the same skill and knowledge that you have of SQL. Now you bring it to SQL Managed Instance, so you don't have to do anything new. You basically learn anything new. I mean, your same skill set still applicable to Azure SQL Managed Instance. In terms of high availability, first of all, look at the SLA. This is 99.99%. Okay. So in that case, this is the Azure money-backed SLA that is available. In regards to replica, I talked about. There is only one replica in the case of general purpose. But in the case of business mission critical, there are three replicas, and there's one read-only replica in the case of business critical. You can do availability groups with business critical, but with general purpose, it's failover instance. In regards to you have auto failover across regions, and in regards to disaster recovery, some of the um, you know things that make it kind of a very useful is point in time recovery. I mean, this is where sometime you run a query, a database query, and you have a really bad feeling after that. That's to correct that, where you can go do a point in time recovery and go back to the last known good state that you were before you running the query. Okay. So all of those things are available. Of course, you have the long-term database backup retention that can be up to 10 years for regulatory purposes and all that. Okay. So let's look at some of the new feature. And the biggest one I talk about is the free SQL managed instance. Because before that, running a SQL managed instance, let's say that you just want to evaluate it, you want to play with it, you want to see if it works in your environment or for a certain scenario, you have to pay for it. Okay. It's not like app service, you have a free, kind of instance. That was not possible. Now there is a free SQL managed instance that is available. You can use it for 12 months. There are some other restrictions that you can take a look at it. That is available. You can use. Another one is endpoint policies. So what are endpoint policy? Endpoint policy. So let's say that your SQL server has to connect to certain storage accounts, okay, for restoring databases or some other purpose. What you can do is you can set up and now endpoint policies on a SQL Server to make sure that certain the storage account only can connect to the database and vice versa to avoid any sort of data exfiltration. So that's where this thing comes into picture. Okay. And some of the other things, one is the now you can link SQL Server and SQL MI. This was a big ask because a number of workloads, when they were application they were moving, they were relying on linked server, and uh, it was difficult for them to move the application as such without significant updates if the link server is not supported. So link server support is there. I also want to mention service broker support is now there as well. And the one with the two-way DR with SQL Server 2022. So for example, if you are running SQL Server 2022 on-prem, you can set up a two-way DR where if your environment has an issue, the database has an issue, SQL Server 22 can fail over to SQL Server Managed Instance in the cloud, and your business continue as usual. And once you bring the environment back up, you can switch back to the on-prem environment, you know, things like that. Any questions so far?
No questions on the chat, Naveed.
Go ahead, please. Sorry, man. Can you read it?
No, there are no questions at the
Oh, there
moment,
are no
Naveed.
questions.
I'm happy to read them, guys. If you want to put your questions
Yeah,
on the chat, I'm happy to read them aloud.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ella. And by the way, those feature appear in a wave or kind of a set of features. So there is a November 2022 feature wave for SQL Managed Instance. And in that, one of the cool feature is start and stop. So when you have, and this is to me, I think it's a great feature where you have workloads that are running periodically. You don't need running all of the time. For example, maybe the dev test workload, things like that. In that, what you can do is you can stop an instance, and in that, when you stop the instance, you are not paying for the vCore cost and the cost of SQL Server licensing. Of course, the storage cost will be there because your data is stored, but you're not paying for the vCore cost. Second is zone redundancy. So zone redundancy is now supported with business critical tier. And the last thing that, or the key, one of the key change in this wave is the support for distributed transaction coordinator, the managed DTC. So now you can have these distributed transactions that you can use. And once again, this is for backward compatibility. If you have certain workloads that they are using such type of distributed transaction, you can take advantage of it with SQL Managed Instance. Okay, so with that, let's quickly jump into a demo. What we're going to do is we're going to try to create first an instance. Let's take a look. What are some of the things that are available in that? And then we will go back and yeah, and then we will go back and look at the some of the characteristics of SQL Server managed instance. So let's go in here. Hopefully everybody can see my screen and create a managed instance. Okay, so by the way, if you want to take advantage of a free offer, you can go in here and click on apply for free offer, and it will create the instance for you. I mean, the some of the stuff here is pretty generic, like the subscription, resource group, name of your server, region, and just keep in mind in regards to the free offer, for some reason it may or may not be available in one region. So please try to switch region if you have if you want to take advantage of the free offer and you find an error like, hey, the free offer is not available in your region. Okay, so let's spend some time on the managed instance uh, compute, and storage. So these are the options here. You have the general purpose, which is 4 to 80 cores, 32 GB to 16 uh, terabyte RAM, and super fast storage. So basically, these are the two options available. As you can see, the storage capacity is slightly different for business critical with general purpose. General purpose gives you more storage capacity, but business critical gives you that super fast storage. So if I go in here with the business mission critical, and then um, you know um, you can pick up what is the hardware that you want to use. Of course, you have the standard series, which is Gen 5, and then you have the premium series. You can go with the Ice Lake processor, or and the other option is memory optimized, that gives you more RAM that is attached to this, so that gives you better performance. But of course, you can see. And then here you can increase the size of the core, so you can go up to 128 core in this particular one, and you can go up to 16 terabytes. So this is basically, so as you can see here, depending on this thing changes, depending on what type of series that you use, your choices may be different. So as you can see, once I go back to the standard, in the standard, I can go only up to 1 terabyte. Got it? But in the premium series, I can, but then memory optimized, I can go up to higher. So if I go in here, let's select this one. Yeah. So as you can see, yeah. So I can go up to 4 terabytes. So you have to play with these, but just keep in mind, just pay attention to the cost. Like this is a high level cost that will be there. And just one other thing, in the case of storage, you don't have to pay for the IOPS. They are covered as a part of this, um, the part of the Azure SQL Managed Instance. So that cost is covered. Okay. So that's that. I mean, you can pick whatever option that you want to pick. If you have a SQL Server license, you can, depending on if you have the standard or premium license, you can use hybrid use benefit or hybrid failover rights, whatever you want to use. And then you can look at the backups and things like that, how you want to do the backups, all of that you can set up here. So okay, so let's cancel out here and let's go in here. So that's that. And oh, by the way, in terms of authentication, you can use both SQL and Entra ID authentication. Entra, if you don't know, it's Azure AD identity. That's named Microsoft Entra. Okay. And then in terms of networking, that's where you can go in. You can create a new virtual network, and what it will do is it will create a subnet managed instance, and that's where it will deploy this particular resource. And in terms of connection type, I mean, you can have the proxy based connection or direct, and each have their pros and cons. Please take a look at it. And I will highly recommend not using a public endpoint. I mean, you will see in my test, I am using a public endpoint, um, and just for demo. In production scenario, you want to stay away from private. Either use private endpoint or access it through VPN or express route, things like that. Your database. Don't use any public endpoint. That's a big data exfiltration risk. Okay. In terms of security, you can use Microsoft Defender for SQL that you can use. And in terms of identity, um, just you can use system managed identity, and at the same time, you can use a service principal as well for Microsoft Entra principles. And you can set up TDE as well. So basically, here you will have to, if I click on this configure, it will ask me if I do want to do customer managed key, it's going to ask me select a key, and it will ask me to pick up a key vault and go from there. So key vault, or if I have a managed HSM, it will ask me to go from there. Okay, so that's that. And then there are some additional settings, setting the collation. And if you want to do any geo replication, want to set up the maintenance window, and that's where you're going to want to do customize the maintenance windows and things like that. That's all. Once you do it, you can create instance. What they have done is a big improvement. with the November wave, you can create an instance in less than 30 minutes. Before it used to take few hours. So they have improved the time significantly. Okay, so that's another thing that you can do with that. So I'm not gonna wait here for 30 minutes for instance to create. I already have an instance, and first of all, this is my SQL instance, and let me show you. Oh, come on. For some reason, it decided to sign me out from all windows. Give me 1 second. So this is my instance, and let me go into the resource group for a second. Quickly, I know we have only 2 minutes, but just want to show it to you. Look, it created these resources. You have SQL instance, you have the the managed database that I have created, and virtual cluster, virtual network. So all of these things are created for you, for your database to as a part of this database creation. And this is how this database looks like. This is the free instance I was talking to you about. That's what I have created. I just run, oh man, it decided to stop. Wonderful. So let's start it. Let's see. Um, so for some reason, it decided to stop. Maybe I was not kind of paying attention. So in any case, this is if you look at the so you got the point. I mean, this is basically look like any other SQL Server instance, and you can run it, and you can uh, use it to host your SQL workload. And I was accessing it a few minutes ago. I'm not sure why it decided to stop, but let's. So forgive me for not showing that part of the demo because it's still starting. But in any case, you get the idea that this is the new enhancements that are there in this particular release are, of course, the start and stop, number one, and the ability to do distributed DTC. And you see here, this is the distributed transaction coordinator, and the last one is the zone redundancy. So you have the ability to host this database in a zone redundant fashion. Any questions? I know we are right on time.
Just quick question. Can you connect to this with SQL Management Studio?
Yes, yes, actually, that was about to show. This is how I'm connecting to it. But for some reason, since it decided to shut down, I cannot connect to it. So you see here, this is, I have a database hosted on it. So since it's shut down, it's I can't show that part. I should have paid more attention just because I checked it a few minutes ago and it was running, so maybe the schedule was somehow. Uh, so that's all I wanted to share. Any last call for any questions?
Thank you, Naveed. There are no questions on the chat.
Thank you, Allah. Folks, thank you very much for joining and hope to see everybody in an Azure Power Lunch session next week. So have a great Friday. Wonderful weekend. You.
Your week, guys.